Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is lurk. And this verb has actually been suggested by two viewers, Maria Clara and Luis. I think it's great. You both have this same idea at virtually the same time. So thank you both for suggesting this verb. Now, let's take a moment and review some of the definitions or the ways that we can use this verb. The first way you might hear or see the verb lurk used is describing when a person or an animal is either hidden or is remaining hidden in order to ambush, kind of surprise, and possibly attack someone or something. A second way you might encounter this verb lurk can mean for an unpleasant quality, to be present in a barely discernible state, although it's still presenting a threat. So here, kind of discernible is kind of like you're barely aware, but it's still kind of in your mind. A third and more recent way this verb has been used can mean that on social media you're reading postings, or it could be on some type of internet forum, but you're not actively contributing. You're not commenting, but you're following along with all the other comments. For now, you should know that lurk is a regular verb. When you want to make the progressive form of this verb, all you need to do is add ing, and that forms lurking. The past tense and the participle forms of this verb can be made by adding ed. Now, our base verb, lurk, ends in an unvoiced sound, k or k sound. This means our ed ending is going to make a t sound, and I'm not going to add an extra syllable to the verb when I say it. So the past tense and the participle forms of the verb should sound like this: lurked, lurked. Okay. Now there's one phrasal verb you might encounter, and that is to either lurk about or lurk around. I think as I looked for examples, I saw many more instances of lurk around, particularly in US media, but this could seem a little different if you're speaking English in another location. So for lurk around, you should know that it means to move or hang about someplace in a rather suspicious and sneaky manner. So, this phrasal verb in a sentence might be: that person has been lurking around the alley all week. Right? So someone is maybe around every day for a long period of time at this particular place, and there's maybe something about the way the person is moving or interacting, maybe their body language, facial expressions that just kind of make you right? So, what you're probably noticing is that this verb has a rather negative meaning to it. Can make people feel a bit anxious, like something bad is going to happen. Um, we see that in each of those definitions and the phrasal verb here. Now, let's continue using our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today, I thought we would practice the past progressive and the present progressive. Let's start with the past progressive. Now, many textbooks and teachers will call this the past continuous, and that is just fine. It means the same thing. In both the past progressive and the past continuous, we're talking about actions that were ongoing or actions that were continuing in a completed point in time, or a completed period of time. Now, the reason I like saying past progressive is you can see two P's in the name of this verb tense, and it can help you remember you need two parts to your verb. So we will be using the past form of be and then the ing form of the verb. So this, of course, requires a little bit of review because in the past tense, our verb be has two forms. So if our subject is I, he, she, or it, we're going to use was, W-A-S. But if our subject is you, we, or they, then you want to use were, W-E-R-E. And you can see that in my example here. Ghosts, goblins, and ghouls were lurking throughout the park during the nighttime 5K. Okay. I saw this description of a recent event, special kind of community run connected to Halloween. And the idea was you would be running and there would be people kind of jumping out and scaring you for fun. So that's that kind of waiting in a sort of a hidden way to ambush or to surprise an attack. And here, I don't think anyone was actually harming anyone, but just, again, kind of that adrenaline rush of a boo. Okay. Now, if you want to make a negative past progressive sentence, again, keep paying attention to that subject. Use was not, and then the ing form the verb, or were not, and then the ing form the verb. Here's another example. The character wasn't lurking in dark rooms, but the threat of that still terrified me. So I saw a sentence very similar to this. I think someone was talking about a series of books and how they were meant to be very surprising and kind of keeping you on the edge of your seat. But and I think the person who had read these books was feeling like, oh, I've read so much. I feel like, oh, the story could be happening to me. Finally, let's talk about making a yes or no question in the past progressive. To do this, you start with that past form of be, so either was or were. Whichever word matches your subject, that subject comes next. Then use the ing form the verb. Here's another example. Was the alligator lurking in the pond? Okay, so again, back to that first definition. Remember, this can absolutely be an animal that's kind of hidden, waiting to attack its prey. Now, let's move on and talk about the present progressive. Again, some textbooks and teachers call this the present continuous, and that's perfectly okay. Present progressive and present continuous mean exactly the same thing. We are describing either actions that are happening now or actions that are in progress during a time period that has not been completed. The reason I like saying present progressive, again, is that there are two letter P's in the name of the verb tense, and that can help you remember that you're going to need two parts to make your verb. So here we're going to be using a present form of be. So again, this means I need to pay attention to my subject. If my subject is I, then I want to use am and then the ing form the verb. If my subject is he, she, or it, I'll use is and then the ing form of the verb. And finally, if my subject is you, we, or they, I'll use are, A-R-E, and then the ing form the verb. Let's take a look at an affirmative or positive sentence. A 1,600-pound shark is lurking in the waters off New Jersey. Okay. Now, this sentence was true. It was happening now when I made this video. I hope by the time it posts, it's no longer a threat off the coast of New Jersey to any boaters. It's kind of cold, so probably no swimmers, but hopefully no attacks there. Now, let's talk about making negative present progressive sentences. To do this, again, start with your subject, use the form of be that matches, then not, then the ing form the verb. Here's another example. Global challenges aren't lurking somewhere in the distant future. They're here today. Okay. I saw lots of references to this verb lurk as it relates to the environment, global warming, other climate change issues. So you might still see another example of that in just a moment. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the present progressive. To do this, start with your form of be, whichever form matches your subject, so the subject comes next. Then you want to use the ing form the verb. Here's my last example. Is They're a hidden risk lurking for AI stocks in 2025. Okay. Again, that kind of idea of maybe we're having sort of a bad feeling about what's going to happen, a potential threat that is looming. Now, let's move on and talk about some words that are related to our verb lurk. The first word you might encounter is the noun lurker. That er suffix generally tells us a person who, and then we can look back to that base verb. So this is a person who lurks. Right? This can go back to really any of those three definitions we discussed in the beginning of the video. So here this word is in a sentence. A late night lurker was arrested after reports of suspicious behavior. So again, someone um, seemingly maybe doing something that made others a little concerned or worried, maybe doing it in a place that seems unusual. One more word for us today. It's the adjective lurking. So looks like our progressive form of the verb, but what you're going to see here are examples where it's being used as an adjective. This adjective can be used in a couple different ways. The first way to use it is to describe something that remains hidden. Again, with that idea that it's going to ambush or attack. So, an example of this. What lurking predators are in this forest? Right? So, what are the things we can't see but might be willing or waiting and ready to attack prey? A second way to use this adjective is again, we're describing some kind of unpleasant quality that you're just maybe slightly aware that it's there, but it's still kind of presenting a threat. An example of this. The changing climate has given way to lurking fears of more excessive rain events and more severe droughts. So now some people might debate whether climate change is barely discernible, right? For a lot of people, they can feel it. That doesn't seem like it's just barely there. It is ever more present. But again, I see lots of references to this in various forms of media. So I think while scientists are nearly unanimous in agreement that this does exist, there's still sometimes seems a bit of hesitancy about saying it in maybe a more definitive way. So again, a special thanks to Maria Clara and Luis for suggesting today's verb. I thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.